Hello, my name is Donnie Bentley. I manage and run Bentley & Associates Home Inspection Services, and we service the greater East Tennessee area. Today I'd like to talk about garage inspections. We actually do a lot of home inspections, and we always have a lot of questions with the garages. The garages come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. This is an attached garage on a brick veneer home. We also have a lot of basement garages. We have a lot of garages that are on stone. In our part of the country, we have a lot of detached garages. But what I want to do is, as we walk around the house, we want to check the outside of the garage first usually. Notice in this house we have some cracking along the stone above the service door, and that's not a good thing, but we also have a little bit of water damage on the door. These are things that are going to be flagged in the home inspection report, but these are not critical items. As we go through, like on a brick veneer home, it's very common to find problems with the brick around the garage doors. A lot of times they have a lot of cracking and movement. Notice the header on this one is settled down just a little bit here at the bottom. Here's another one. We found a lot of problems with a little bit of cracking along at the end of the lintel in the brick veneer. Usually this stuff's going to just go in the notes section of a report, but it is things that we want the buyer to know that's going on. We also see a lot of cracking in the center of the garage door above the door. Notice there's cracking traveling up through here. Most of the time this stuff doesn't present a major problem. We also look at the outside of the door trim. We find a lot of water damage and problems associated with the doors on the outside. It's always important that we look at the doors. Notice there's a little dent in this one. We will always make notes of this stuff on the home inspection report, and over on the other side of the door we also have some water damage here. And if you look, there's some water damage over here on the service door also. We get to checking the roof, and a lot of times we find flashing that's not done correctly or roofing material that's got a problem. A lot of times this will just show up on the report as part of the roof inspection or something, but it's critical that these garages are flashed out correctly if they have different roof intersections and stuff. It's also very important that we get the water away. Water running down off these gutters like this can cause foundations to move and cause some serious problems. Also, landscaping has to be done right. The vinyl siding is not supposed to be below, or is not supposed to have grading or mulch up on the side. It's got to be up out of the grading like it should be. We look at the garage doors. A garage door typically is the heaviest moving part of most houses. Here we have one. It's a masonite door. As you notice, all along here there's some water damage along the bottom of this door, and we're going to write all that stuff up in a report. You get on the inside and you notice there's some weather seal damage, a little bit of water damage along this header above the door. These things will all be written up in the report. Another thing to look at is the condition of the door. Notice there's a little bend in the door here. The weather seal is damaged and loose. It's also not very uncommon to find cracks in the door panels. There's damage where they've been hit or a lot of stress over many years of use. We found a lot of little stress cracks at the top. That's where the opener is attached, and we found a lot of problems there. On these old wood doors with masonite and hardboard panels, a lot of times we find water staining, and in this case a lot of mildew and staining needs to be taken care of. This just happened to be a foreclosure. It had been sitting empty for a long time, and the roof was leaking, and there were some other issues too. But we found a lot of the rollers. We look at all these things and make sure all the screws are tight, all the rollers are in place and working correctly. Here's another masonite door with a lot of water damage on it. There's actually some cracking in some of the wood. These are the type things that we look at a lot and want to make evident in the report. This is probably one of the most common things we find. It's just where one of the doors has been backed into by a car, a lawnmower, or whatever. We also look at how the door is mounted. This is real important. We want to make sure the punched angle and everything's secured to the ceiling correctly. All the tracks and stuff are mounted properly, and the rollers are in place and operating like they should be. Another big concern we have is the springs. Now these tension springs like this, there's supposed to be a steel cable running inside of them, and if they're not adjusted properly they can be a problem. We always want this cable to go through the inside. I've got a picture in just a second that shows you what it's supposed to look like. See, this cable just runs through here. It doesn't do anything other than the fact that if this ever fails or anything breaks, it will control the spring and not let it get away and do any damage. We also want to look when we got the torsion springs. We want to make sure all the screws are tight and the cables are following correctly. That's a big issue on these doors. And if you notice, we got a broken spring here. These springs do fail. Get a little closer look at it here. These are real important things to find. This is where the garage door opener attaches and pulls from. A lot of times we find a lot of damage in these areas. We pay close attention to those places. Here's another one with a cable missing in this, but this garage doesn't have a ceiling. It's a basement and it doesn't have a proper firewall. That's going to be listed in the report. This door was almost a new house. They only put one screw in each side. None of the brackets were screwed on properly to the house. This is a big deal. It's not a hard fix or an expensive fix, but it's a very important fix. We also look at a lot of older homes, and they will add a modern type garage door with a low ceiling. They will either have a little bracket like this that when the door closes, as it closes, this cable rolls out and this catches on this little pin and pushes the door snug. And we'll see that a lot, like you see how low the ceiling is on this door. And there's another way to solve this thing is putting a double track on. When you have a problem like this, we can always add a second track that lays above them for these low ceiling clearances. They work real well for these configurations. Notice how the garage door track is almost against the ceiling here. And again, this one doesn't have a finished ceiling. This is a basement house that's been converted. The garage door openers is another thing that we always look closely at. The safety reverse and everything's got to work properly on them. They've got to be properly maintained. The drive chain is another thing that we find a lot of times it's not adjusted properly. This is another thing that's not hard to fix. There's the screw here. This is a way to adjust the tension that's on the drive chain. The safety reverse that's mounted on the electric eyes for the garage doors, this is another important issue. These should be 4 to 6 inches off the ground, and they should work properly on every occasion. Occasionally we find homeowners that have had problems and just done an override on them, and this guy had a problem with the cat running in and out, so he just set them up beside each other and they're facing one another and not working properly. This is not an acceptable situation. Also on the inside of the garage, a lot of times we find water stains and stuff that are on the ceilings where the roof's been leaking. Water stains are a big problem. We want to know what's going on, where the water's coming from, and what's causing them. This is a carport that's been closed up, and we're just going to make note of what's going on in the report. Not anything really wrong, it's just something that the new home buyer needs to be aware of. This is another basement garage. We find a lot of cracking in the walls. These things can be an issue, depends on how much movement's noticed. We also look at the service doors and make sure there's not any animal damage and the weather seal's working real good. And while we're on the inside of the house, we also want to look for termite damage or old water damage along the baseboards and on the walls. This is another common thing that we find in garages. This house had some termites in the past and had been treated properly. There's no active termites, but we did note that there was damage there. This garage had water pooling inside. There's a little bit of grading issue outside, and there's no weather seal on the door. And last but not least, we want to talk about the electrical. You should have GFCI protected outlets in the garage. They should all be working properly, and there shouldn't be any loose or unsecured wires. All the polarity and everything should be correct. And on a modern home, we recommend smoke detectors be present. And if they're hardwired on a newer home, they've been removed, that's also a big issue. This is Donnie Bentley with Bentley & Associates Home Inspection Services, trying to educate you just a little bit on what we do when we look at your home, especially on a garage. You can call us at 865-986-2516